There are thousands of US Marines on the way. What happens if they get used, do you think?
Just read what happened in Vietnam.
Good day, friends, and welcome to Plymouth in the south of England. Today we're going to be looking at the Iran war, and the question is the US losing? For the second time in 2 years, the US has followed Israel into direct conflict with Iran. So the format seems to be Israel starts a sequence and the US follows up. You could be forgiven, perhaps, for thinking the US and Israel are joined at the hip. According to President Trump, this current Iran war was supposed to be a short excursion. And after extensive bombing of 3 Iranian nuclear sites in June 2025, he claimed there's nothing left to hit. But apparently not. The United States is now facing a widening conflict causing global instability and fears this could become another protracted deployment like Vietnam, apart from causing financial instability around the world. Let's start with the reality on the ground. According to recent reports, the US has already suffered casualties and injuries. At least 200 US troops have been wounded. 13 service members have died. And despite heavy bombing campaigns, Iran is still striking back effectively, though reports are that the intensity has dropped to about 10% of the initial few days. Many Western analysts like Scott Ritter and Colonel Douglas MacGregor emphasize the concern of Iran having a vast stockpile of missiles and advanced drones. And according to Aviation Week, the missile and drone threat is far from eliminated. In a recent attack by the US Air Force on military sites on Karg Island, Donald Trump stated he had deliberately spared the oil facilities there. Karg handles roughly 90% of Iran's oil exports and is a critical economic asset. Striking it would massively disrupt global energy markets. So the facility is continuing to operate and load tankers largely uninterrupted, according to Iranian officials. Iran hasn't just absorbed these attacks, it has retaliated in a big way across a number of US bases in Bahrain, the Navy's Fifth Fleet base, Qatar, another major US base, was a missile attack on Ad al-Udeid. Cyprus also was attacked. A NATO-linked base was attacked by a drone. And, of course, shipping and global economy has effectively been disrupted. The oil supply is broken and traffic into the Gulf has dropped to 1 to 2 vessels a day, according to Reuters. And there is evidence of continual daily aerial attacks on Israel. Despite draconian penalties for any Israeli filming the disruption, YouTube is full of first-person evidence of intense disruption and people sheltering in underground shelters with their pets. And what's happening is the allies are refusing to fully back the US. Donald Trump called on NATO and other allies to support the US against Iran, especially in securing the Straits of Hormuz, escorting ships through, but all declined. Frustrated, he said the US does not need the help of anyone and criticized NATO for making a very foolish mistake. Just yesterday, Keir Starmer stated he would not be volunteering naval escorts through the Strait of Hormuz. With key US naval vessels sitting comfortably 500 miles off Iran, it was a no-brainer for Starmer and, indeed, every other NATO ally. Why set yourself up as an easy target in the 21-mile-wide Strait of Hormuz? Commentators such as Scott Ritter have pointed out that even low-tech basic artillery could target any transiting vessels through Hormuz. And numerous commentators warn that any attempt to force through commercial traffic could be highly risky. Iran has repeatedly said it will treat ships as legitimate targets, and military analysts note that missile, drones, and even mines or asymmetric small boats could be used to attack vessels. Iran's foreign minister has publicly said that the strait is open to all countries' ships, except those of the US, or Israel, implying that non-Western traffic may be permitted. And there are confirmed cases of specific non-Iranian ships being cleared or negotiating safe passage. For example, a Turkish-owned ship was allowed to transit after receiving Iranian permission. There are also reports of Pakistani tankers transiting the strait under negotiated terms, suggesting selective passages are possible. But many operators still refuse to enter a war zone and are barred from entering a war zone for insurance purposes. So the present level of passage through Hormuz is 1 to 2 non-Iranian vessels per day, but dozens of Iranian vessels pass through unimpeded. What about Trump's reaction? Well, his messaging has been inconsistent. On the one hand, he claims victory, the war is already won. On the other, he's demanding help from allies and warning of escalation. And what about Joe Kent, director of the US National Counter-Terrorism Center, who resigned March 17th, 2026? He said he could not support the war because Iran posed no imminent threat, and the conflict was influenced by pressure from Israel and its US lobby. Trump called him weak on security. This contradiction matters because it signals uncertainty at the top. This might be the biggest red flag of all. Joe Kent's resignation underlines a dysfunctional administration with a lack of intelligent planning. Even before the conflict, US intelligence warned that Iran would almost certainly retaliate after any strikes, and that regime collapse was unlikely. Analysts noted that Iran's leadership and military, including the IRGC, remained intact and capable of responding. These assessments were reported by Reuters and the Washington Post, but Trump chose to ignore this advice. The risks were known, and the war went ahead anyway. This echoes past conflicts and raises the question, is this another war based on flawed assumptions? What about the US Navy and the Strait of Hormuz? The US Navy is supposed to protect one of the world's most critical waterways, the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most dangerous choke points on Earth. But in practice, it's keeping its ships hundreds of miles offshore, leaving the strait largely unprotected. Meanwhile, around 1,000 commercial tankers are stuck nearby, waiting for safe passage, and with Iran having already carried out 21 confirmed attacks on merchant vessels, they remain at serious risk. The Navy's presence is too far away to stop attacks. Meanwhile, it's struggling to protect global shipping, defend bases, deter Iran, and avoid escalation, all at the same time. And for now, it's failing to secure the strait. Now, the big question, could the US invade? Karg Island is the key target, Iran's oil hub. The US has already bombed it heavily, more than 90 Iranian military sites hit. Some analysts and retired officers have suggested that the US could seize Karg Island to control or even steal Iran's oil. With retired Marine Colonel Mark Kansian noting that Marines already deployed give Washington that option, and Trump himself has touched on the possibility of ground troops if necessary. A US Marine Expeditionary Unit of 2,200 was sent to the Arabian Sea and Northern Gulf region during the early phase of this conflict. This unit includes amphibious assault ships, helicopters, and supporting naval vessels. This deployment gives the US the option to conduct limited ground operations if directed, including potentially securing strategic locations like Karg Island, though no such assault has been ordered. But invading an island that is heavily defended, is close to the Iran mainland, and can be resupplied or counterattacked would be extremely risky. So far, US boots on the ground appears unfeasible in the near future, as it would require months of preparation and probably affirmation by Congress. With something like 80% of Democrats opposed to military escalation, this is never going to happen. At the same time, reports indicate the US considered arming Iranian Kurdish groups to open a new front inside western Iran, though Trump later publicly rejected sending them in directly. The Kurds demanded air cover, and that would expose the USAF to missile attacks. So there are a few military options being discussed, but no evident take-up on any of this at the moment. So is this a winnable war? Overall, it's Iran that's in the wheelhouse. Despite losing its leader and many top officials, the regime continues to hold power, with the population largely supporting its resistance to the attackers. Iran doesn't need to defeat the US militarily. It just needs to hold its present position of striking bases, disrupting oil markets, dragging out the conflict and dividing Western allies. And of course, it can continue attacking Israel. Even internal US voices such as Joe Kent warned of no immediate threat existing, which leads us to the core conclusion. With disharmony among Trump's inner circle, Rubio and Vance differing somewhat in their enthusiasm for this project, a key resignation plus Trump's apparent indelible support for Israel, it's clear this is not going to be a quick war, neither a clean war nor a winnable one.